How do you create the perfect soldier? It all begins with his mind. Yes, physical conditioning was important, and training in how to fight was essential, but what set your average Spartan soldier apart from the rest of antiquity's warriors was a near-complete detachment from the other parts of life. Ancient Sparta was such a unique society that even basic social conventions, such as the use of money and coins, worked very differently for them. For any of you who would have loved to hold in your hands a coin issued under King Leonidas, or own a coin used to pay for a Spartan soldier who fought against Athens during the Peloponnesian War, I have some bad news for you. Such a thing does not exist. But why? Why didn't Sparta make its own coins? I mean, it did, but they only began striking coins centuries after everyone else around them was already doing it, and they only did it long after their golden age was over, when Sparta was, frankly, a pale shadow of its former self. In fact, they only started making coins because they were forced by circumstances. It's kinda weird for a channel dedicated to coins to talk about a city that for such a long time didn't make any, but anyways, to understand classical Sparta's disdain for coins, we need to go over its history and its very unique society. Sparta was located in Laconia, in the southeast of the Peloponnese, a region surrounded by mountains, with limited access to commerce with the wider Greek world, even if it was in the Greek mainland, and not exactly the easiest land from which to feed a large population. This was actually a common problem across much of mainland Greece. Many Greek cities were squeezed between mountains, poor soil, and basically limited farmland. And one of the solutions for this problem typically was colonization. When a city grew beyond what its land could support, part of its population could be sent away to found new colonies at another place. But Sparta chose a very different path. Instead of solving its population problem by sending large numbers of citizens away, Sparta expanded by force, and it looked inwards, towards the Peloponnese itself. First, they consolidated control over the rest of their native region, Laconia, probably by the 8th century BC. Then, the Spartans pushed west and conquered Messenia, the rich and fertile region west of their homeland. This conquest became the foundation of Sparta's initial power. By controlling Laconia and Messenia, and almost the entirety of the peninsula, Sparta now dominated huge swaths of land and lots of people. But the key is, Sparta's new subjects from Messenia and the rest of Laconia, they were not absorbed as equal members of Spartan society. They were instead used to sustain Sparta. They created one of the strangest societies in the ancient Greek world. Slaves apart, these were basically property of their owners. Spartan society consisted of 3 castes. At the bottom were the Helots, an unfree population. We could call them serfs, living under the rule of Sparta. Now, the Helots composed the majority of the population, and they were state-owned. They were tied to their land and forced to produce the food and goods that sustained the Spartan elite. Helots might have been forced to give as much as half of everything they produced to Sparta. So, the line between a lowly slave and a Helot was actually surprisingly thin. Then there were the perioikoi, whose name roughly means those who live around. Now, these were free people who lived inside Spartan territory, in the cities surrounding Sparta. But despite not being maybe as oppressed as the Helots, the perioikoi were free, but they were subjects of Sparta. They too were responsible for keeping the economy alive by farming, trading, manufacturing goods, producing like the weapons, the tools, everything that their overlords needed. Activities that were actually beyond full Spartan citizens. The Spartans were barred from doing these activities. An easy way to differentiate a perioikoi from a helot is that while the helots were told where to live and what to produce, and most of their production was taken away, all for the benefit of Sparta, a perioikoi had maybe a certain degree of freedom, but he too had to pay tribute to Sparta. Perioikoi also went to war supporting Spartan troops when they were needed. And finally, above all of them, were the full citizens of Sparta. These were the men who made Sparta famous. Their main duty was the survival of the Spartan state, and they served it through war, politics, and public life. That's it, basically. By law, they were kept away from activities that could distract them from their military service and from serving any political duty that they had to serve for Sparta. Activities such as commerce, any kind of craft, agriculture, basically any pursuit of private wealth was seen as personal and something selfish. Anything done for the individual was considered a dangerous distraction from public duty. A Spartan was supposed to have one simple purpose: to train, to fight, to work as a flawless machine alongside his fellow citizens, and, if he reached old age, to help guide the state. His whole life was very, well, as you can see, like state-focused. It was shaped by a system designed to isolate his mind from anything that wasn't the direct interest of the Spartan polis. And this unique social organization gave rise to the Spartan soldiers, so terrifying to the rest of Greece. Other cities had citizens who fought, of course, when necessary, but every other Greek, they could become a soldier, but they had other primary activities. Sparta had citizens who were built for war, and only that. Since a Spartan had to focus on so few things, be a good soldier, be a good general, be a good administrator, they became incredibly good at these very few things. A Spartan soldier had significantly higher morale in battle, was in better physical shape, and was a much better fighter overall compared to any other Greek. The same can be said about their administrators. During the archaic and classical periods, Sparta operated under a diarchy. They had two kings. One could veto the decisions of the other, and a system of checks and balances was in place, where citizens, and there was also a council of elders, which also held significant power. This generated this remarkable, stable political system of checks and balances. No, Spartans were maybe not very fond of listening to foreigners or any helots' concerns, but we can't deny that, at least inside the polis, the system worked very well and very stable. In fact, Spartan generals became so famous across the Mediterranean that foreign powers were willing to hire them. One famous example was that of Xantippus. He was a Spartan commander hired by the Carthaginians during the First Punic War. He overhauled their training program, reorganized their army, and helped Carthage once again have a fighting chance against the Romans. But when he returned to Sparta with his wages, certainly a very big chest full of very valuable Carthaginian gold and silver coins, that money was not supposed to become his personal fortune. According to Spartan tradition, their laws were attributed to a man called Lycurgus, a legendary lawgiver credited with organizing Spartan society in this way and turning full Spartan citizens into this military elite caste. So, according to his laws, gold and silver were not supposed to belong to a single Spartan. Any precious metals had to be directed to the public treasury to serve the needs of Sparta, not the private needs of one man. This episode actually helps us clarify the role money played in Spartan society. It's not that money was forbidden. It's not that no coins could ever enter Laconia. As I just said, after his contract with Carthage, Xantippus went back to Sparta with probably a chest full of money. It's just that true Spartans shouldn't own or handle it. Maybe the perioikoi or the helots could, especially if they had to handle money in order to fulfill whatever task they had to the Spartan state. After all, the state had to work within a Mediterranean economy. But the Spartiates, the Spartans themselves, they were to stay away from coins. Lycurgus' laws dictate this was meant to help keep Spartan citizens fresh with their clean heads, away from the corrupting effects of money. A Spartan should be a citizen, he should be a soldier, and that was it. Gold and silver had to serve the Spartan state, not individuals. The first communist theorists looked back at Sparta as one of the first, let's say, communist experiments, and Lycurgus was considered one of the first proto-Marxists. If we look coldly at the society they created, the comparison is actually quite easy to understand. Sparta tried to abolish individualism, nearly fully integrating private life with your public relationship with the state. It limited very heavily personal wealth for its citizens and turned the lowly strata of society, the helots, into basically servants of the state. Now, different from today's communists that frame their ideals as having the objective of creating this ideal society of real, absolute equality for all, the end of history, the Spartans didn't have many moral restrictions of hiding what their system truly was. A highly repressive, militaristic system that brutally enslaved large parts of its population so a small elite could rule and fight. In that sense, Lycurgus' Sparta and something like the Soviet Union, they had something maybe disturbing in common. Both sacrificed the individual to elevate the state, and both systems depended on extreme violence to survive. Now, it's important to understand Sparta didn't abolish private property. When a Spartan completed his training and entered full citizen life, he was expected to possess a kleros, a plot of land assigned to sustain his household, worked by helots who produced for him. So every true Spartan had property. More than that, in fact, they were all sort of like a landowner aristocracy. The difference is that his wealth was not supposed to come from coins or commerce, at least not directly from his work, but from the land he had and the value produced by his serfs, his helots. And because Spartan men spent most of their time training, serving, and fighting, their wives often managed the family's economic life. Spartan women were expected to manage their husband's property, and they were entitled to inherit it if they died, which happened often. It was a warrior society after all. Many men died relatively young, resulting in many Spartan women becoming extremely wealthy and influential in Spartan politics. So, as you can see, Sparta was not like a society without property. And by the way, if you enjoy ancient history and ancient coins, you should consider subscribing to my newsletter, where I send free exclusive content to my subscribers every week. Being part of this list ensures you always receive my new videos, coin market updates, and extra content. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon for exclusive perks. The links are in the video description and pinned comment. Now, going back to Lycurgus, he understood at least that some form of money, some minor accumulation of wealth, was necessary for the basic necessities of everyday lives. A way of people to at least transfer value between them had to exist. It's just that it had to be kept at a minimum for a Spartan. So, a special kind of money for its citizens was created. The only money a true Spartan could use were these heavy iron rods. They were called oboloi. As you can see from this image, it's like huge iron spits. And, well, these were not very practical. And that's exactly the point. They were meant to be bulky and impractical. Good luck trying to hide or bribe someone with 100 of these. Remember to bring a cart and a couple of donkeys with you, because each individual spit weighed around 2 pounds. These were heavy. Spartan money was designed to fight greed, to be so impractical that it was just impossible to be greedy. And just to be sure they were extra impractical, when they were produced, when they were cast, while they were still hot, the rods were quenched not in water but in vinegar, making them brittle and easy to break. So they wouldn't even serve as other purposes. They couldn't be exported as scrap metal. The peak of Spartan power came after a conflict against one of Greece's most monetized polis, that was Athens. In the Peloponnesian War, we see this very unique conflict between the city whose citizens avoided the use of coins and the one that issued the most prestigious coin of the Mediterranean world, the famous alloy tetradrachma. This might help make the argument that maybe economic power alone wasn't enough for a nation to prove its value, because after all, Sparta won, But it's important to note that Sparta benefited from financial aid from the Persians. It's not like they didn't have a little bit of a push of some financial powers behind the scenes. And once Athens fell, Sparta suddenly found itself in a position they were never truly built to occupy. Their state wasn't designed to occupy this place. They certainly knew how to win a war, but Sparta could not sustain an empire, especially with such a small core army and a small body of citizens. The main problem was that Sparta was too rigid. Its system created these legendary soldiers, yes, they had great generals, they had great administrators. This warrior elite was enough to suppress their initial subjects, but once they found themselves ruling over so many subjects, the Spartan system simply wasn't capable of handling it. There's just so much stepping on other people's necks and pummeling people into submission before you just have so many necks to stomp that you just can't control them with that small core population. An empire had to be flexible in order to rule over so many people, and Sparta didn't do it. And so it happened that in 371 BC, at the Battle of Leuctra, it all came crashing down. Sparta was finally defeated by Thebes, and the loss was devastating. 400 Spartan citizens were killed that day. This may sound like a small number, but considering there were only around, 1,000 Spartans of fighting age at that time, full Spartan citizens, then we can see the weakness hidden inside the whole system. When your warrior elite is so small in numbers and citizenship was so restricted, every single dead Spartan was impossible to replace. And then you lose 400 of them in a single day? Complete disaster. Sparta never recovered from this defeat. During the 4th century, it collapsed piece by piece. First, it lost its grips on the conquest it had gained after the Peloponnesian War. Then, its Messenian subjects, the old Helots, rebelled and gained independence. This was another crippling blow. Sparta had not only lost its pseudo-imperial status, it had also lost the base of its entire system. The very labor force that sustained its warrior elite, suddenly they were gone. And from there, the collapse of its core citizen population only got worse. By the time Macedon rose under Philip and Alexander, Sparta resisted, but it simply was not strong enough to stand against Macedonian power. And by the Hellenistic period, Sparta was still famous, but more as like a relic of the past. In reality, it had become like a third-class actor in the Greek stage, forced to change its government, its society, its laws on citizenship, and even the way it operated economically. And it is at this point that we finally see the rise of what we could call truly native Spartan coins. King Areus I issued very rare silver tetradrachmas in the style of Alexander the Great, with Heracles on the obverse and Zeus enthroned on the reverse, but with a small visual twist. On the reverse, it names the Spartan king instead of the typical Alexandro that you find on the legends. So you actually have the name of the Spartan. They were really proud. Sparta also made smaller silver fractions, with once again Heracles and his mythical club on the reverse. Later rulers, such as Cleomenes III and Nabis, issued some of the most desirable of all Spartan coins. These are actual royal tetradrachmas showing the portraits of actual Spartan kings. I would love to have one of these coins in my collection. Imagine how cool would that be? Because these are actually the only visual records of a real Spartan king in silver format. Sadly, these coins are absurdly rare. The only Spartan silver coin a collector is most likely to find are usually the later small silver issues connected to the Achaean League from around the 2nd and 1st centuries BC. I mean, by then, if you want a Spartan coin, yes, technically it is, but I mean, it's nothing related to the legendary Sparta. Sparta had joined by then a league of other Greek cities because it could no longer stand alone as a great power. This was coinage basically from a whole new reality, where Sparta was forced to band together with other city-states just to preserve some independence in a world that was dominated by big kingdoms and had moved far beyond the time of the polis where it prospered. The very last coin issues of Sparta were actually made under Roman rule, mostly as simple bronze local issues like pocket change made to facilitate trade. The Peloponnese was not really a region important enough for Rome to let them strike their own silver. And these bronze coins, they actually don't even make a direct mention to Sparta. They bear inscriptions like of the Lacedaemonians. So despite the city of Sparta itself probably being the place of the local mint, the coins would only put like all of the Lacedaemonians in equal footing in what was written on the coin. And here in these very last issues of Sparta, we actually find one of the biggest ironies in Spartan history. We see how the mighty have fallen. We see bronze coins showing Lycurgus himself, the legendary lawgiver remembered for keeping gold and silver away from Spartan hands. He was finally placed on the last Spartan coins. Oh, the irony. And here's the reason why you will probably not have a Spartan coin in your collection. Now, what other legendary Greek city should I do a video about? Let me know in the comment section of this video. So I hope you enjoyed yet another episode. Remember to leave a like and a comment in case you learned something new today. Happy coin collecting, and I'll see you soon! Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.